the Royal Stockholm Opera House called the Kungri Opera in Swedish. I love this. I love operas, ballets, Latin music and salsa. So this is like I love this place. I'm at the Kungli Opera in Swedish. It's called the Royal Stockholm Royal Opera House. It's a fantastic. This is the golden foyer of the Royal Stockholm Opera House, and you see this is called the Guldfoyer in Swedish. And today is a showing of Valkyrie, the Valkyries, which is a Wagner classic. Wagner part of this 4 series of what is called the ring cycle or the ring of the Nibelungen, and first being a Das Reingold, and then today is Valkyrie, the second, and the third is Siegfried, and fourth is Gotterdammerung. And these basically, they're kind of, they take the gold nuggets from the Rhine, and then it's shaped into a ring. The important, and then that ring goes around, and the whole story is about the gods trying to get that ring, because the ring gives them so much power. It's based on Germanic, Scandinavian, Nordic, and these kind of fairy tales. It's spectacular really, in the sense. Of course, it's 5 hours. The whole 4 series goes for about 15 hours. And this was composed over 26 years actually by Wagner himself, and then premiered in 1876. And some of the important key things are leitmotifs, something known as if a character or a theme comes recurring, then the same music is played that you identify. The same technique actually is used in the films that were later kind of derivatives from the opera. So this is the Valkyries. The sets were very good and the actors were very good. I mean 5 hours really. With 2 breaks. So it's spectacular. And this is amazing part is I love this opera house. I love ballets, operas, Latin music and salsa. So this I am a regular at this. Spectacular. This is the Royal Stockholm Opera, and today is the showing of Die Walküre, which is the part of something the opera known as the 4 series opera known as the Die Ring des Nibelungen. Die Ring des Nibelungen, or the Ring of the Nibelung, is a cycle of 4 German language epic music dramas. These were composed by Richard Wagner, who is these works are loosely based on the kind of the German legend, heroic legend, namely Norse mythology, and legendary sagas and the Nibelungen. So basically, if you look at Richard Wagner, he termed them as a Bayreuth Festspielhaus, meaning the stage festival play. And these were in the 19th century. They were composed in the late 19th century, and they were like structured in 3 days, preceded by a preliminary evening, which is called Warabend. So it's often referred to as the ring cycle, or the Warner's ring, or simply the ring actually, right? And then with the Wagner, Richard Wagner is a famous German like composer, and he also wrote the libretto. Libretto is basically the kind of the lyrics, or and the music over the course of these 4 series were composed over a period of 26 years from 1848 to 1874. So the 4 parts that constitute the ring cycle are in sequence. The first one is called the Das Reingold, the Reingold. Then second is called the Die Walküre, the Valkyries, which today we are seeing this Die Walküre. And the third is called Siegfried, and the fourth is called the Gotterdammerung, the Twilight of the Gods. Basically, these are all in German. The libretto is in German here. So individual works of this sequence are often performed separately. But what happens is, and indeed the operas contain dialogues that mention events in the previous operas, right? So the viewer could watch any of them without having watched the previous parts, and still understand the plots, because these are in 4 series. Basically, the series revolves around the ring that is derived from the gold of the Rhine. That's the reason the first, or the preamble or the prelude part is called the Das Reingold, from the Rhine river. And then how the ring returns, and then what is the play and scheme of the god, and his the chief god, and the other gods and semi-gods, and the kind of the sons and daughters of the god Vothan, etc. So that's the reason these are performed separately with references to so that the viewer could watch any of them without having watched the previous operas and still understand the plot. However, actually Wagner intended them to be performed in series, so that's the reason they are performed over kind of 4 nights. The first performance in a cycle is so in this actually out of this four, the first performance took place in the Bayreuth festival. Bayreuth is actually an opera house in Germany, where constructed specifically by for Wagner and this place, right? And then 1876 was the year. So the first performance of cycle opened and the first Bayreuth festival. Every summer you have the Bayreuth festival in 1876, beginning with the Das Rheingold on 13th August and then ending with the Götterdämmerung on the 17th August. So opera stage director marks the highest water form of so Der Ring des Nibelungen marks the highest water mark of our art form, right? And then if you really see, so these were, but individually, even Das Rheingold was performed on 22nd September 1869 and Die Walküre on 26 June 1873. But these were like very just for the kind of a king or at the time of prince. But actually, as a cycle, the first time these were performed on the 13th August 1876, Das Rheingold, and 14th August 1876 Die Walküre, 15th August 1876 Siegfried, and the 17th August 1876. So title, actually, if you look at really at how this title comes, right? Wagner title is mostly literally rendered in English as the Ring of the Nibelung. The Nibeling of the title is the dwarf Alberic, and the ring in question is the one that he fashions from the Rheingold. Right, the title therefore denotes Alberic ring. So in English it's called as the Ring of the Nibelung, or the ring cycle. So if you really look at the content, the cycle of work is really on an extraordinary scale, because any opera that performs these four operas actually has to make a lot of preparations and arrangements, because the first of the opera is almost more than 2.5 hours, and fourth Götterdämmerung is almost 5 hours. So total about 15 hours of play, and then obviously that requires a lot of sets, props, and so on. So full performance of the cycle takes place over 4 nights in the opera, with a total playing time of about 15 hours. So depending upon the pacing of the conductor, there is something in opera, there is something in ballet, there is something known as the conductor's pacing, which within a very strict limits they can be a bit slow or a bit fast, but these are not like too much varying actually, right? The conductor paces them, so that's what is called a conductor's pacing in an opera. Right. And then the first and the shortest work, Das Rheingold, has no interval in one continuous piece of music lasting around 2.5 hours, while the final and the longest Götterdämmerung, right, may take up to 5 hours, excluding the intervals. So they usually have 2 intervals. Right now, today we are having, this. The Valkyries, which has 2 intervals. Yeah, the first interval they give it now. And so the cycle is modeled after the ancient Greek dramas. They have represented these as tragedies, and the ring proper begins with Die Walküre. So as we thought, 4 parts, but the first part, Das Rheingold, is more of a preface or a prelude to the whole, kind of the 4 opera series. And so Das Rheingold is called the Vorband. The Das Rheingold is, the ring proper begins with Die Walküre and ends with Götterdämmerung, with Rheingold as a prelude. So Wagner called Das Rheingold a Vorband, or a preliminary evening, right, which gives a kind of sets the stage for the remaining 3 in the sense, right, out of the 4. So preliminary evening, and Die Walküre, Siegfried, and Götterdämmerung were subtitled first day, second day, third day, respectively, of the trilogy proper. So in a way, 4 can be divided as 1 preliminary plus 3 trilogy, right? Second, first day, second day, third day. So scope of the play, story is epic. It follows the struggles of gods, heroes, several mythological creatures, or the eponymous magic ring that grants domination over the entire world. Basically, as I was telling you, the story is about a ring that gives gods the domination of the whole world. So how it moves from Rheingold, how Alberic shapes the ring from the Rheingold, and then it gets back. That's how the story, but a lot of plots, subplots, that's what is covered in this 4-part series, right? Operatic series, right? So it follows the struggles of gods, heroes, and several mythical creatures, or the eponymous magic ring that grants dominion over the entire world. So the drama is intrigue continuing through the generation of protagonists, 3 generations of protagonists, because it includes Wotan, his next generation, and his grandson kind of. until the drama and intrigue continued through three generations of protagonists until the final cataclysm at the end of the Gotterdammerung. Gotterdammerung, the twilight of the gods, is the final part, right? The music of the cycle is thick and very rich textured, and a lot of complexity as cycle proceeds. Wagner wrote for an orchestra of Gergand, and one more thing in this opera is the orchestra is very huge, because in Bayreuth Festspielhaus, which is Bayreuth, the orchestra is the orchestra is actually facing the stage. That's one of the rarest places, opera houses, in which the orchestra is facing the stage, and orchestra basically is not visible. So in that Bauhaus Festspielhaus in Germany, where these four are performed, it's a summer, right? And then Gargantuan, including a mass brass section with the new instruments, such as there were some new instruments such as the Wagner tuba, bass trumpet, and remarkably, he uses a chorals only relatively briefly. In second and third acts, probably in the Valkyrie's song, right? I think he uses a chorus, but it is like the interplay and interaction between the kind of the characters, right? And most of them men with just a few women. So eventually has a purposeful theatre constructed for this, right? The Bayreuth Festspielhaus, in which to perform his work. The theatre has a special stage, as I was telling you, the theatre has a special stage that blends the huge orchestra of the singers' voices, allowing them to sing at a natural volume. One more thing is, the orchestra singers, they sing at a very high volume, right? Because I usually sit at the topmost part of an opera house, in any opera house, be it in Stockholm, London, everywhere. But the topmost part gets the best sound, because the sounds reflects back to the top and comes back, and the opera singers need to be really they should be singing at a very, very high voice to really cater. So because the orchestra is in Bayreuth Festspielhaus in Germany is facing the special stage, right, that blends the huge orchestra with the singer voices, allowing them to sing at a natural volume. So that's that results in being the singers not having to strain themselves and vocally during the long performances. So if you there are so many key characters like Wotan. Wotan, who is the king of the gods, or god of light, air and wind, then who is a bass baritone, then Fricka is Wotan's wife. Then you have the who is a goddess of marriage, and then you have the Loge. Loge is the demigod of fire. Then you have Freya, who is the Fricka's sister, goddess of love, youth and beauty. She is a soprano. Donner is Fricka's brother, god of thunder. Loge is demigod of fire. Freya is the Fricka's sister, goddess of love, youth and beauty, as I was telling you. And then Fra is Fricka's brother, god of spring and happiness, who is a tenor. Then Erda, goddess of wisdom, and the Norns, the weavers of fate, daughters of Erda. This is how it is. And then you have the gods. These are like the gods which we said as Wotan, Fricka, Loge, Freya, Donner, Fro, Erda. These are the gods. And then the Norns. If you come to the mortals, right, because this is this opera represents an interaction between gods and mortals, right? Mortals are the Volsungs, who is the Siegmund. Siegmund, he is a mortal's. He is a mortal, and then they are known as the Volsung. Sigmund, Sieglinde, and Siegfried is their son, mortal son of Wotan. Sieglinde is his twin sister, but what happens is in drama is they may get married and consummate their marriage, and they have a son called Siegfried. And then if you come to the mortals again, then there are other Neidings called Hunding. Hunding is also a mortal, which is kind of an anti-protagonist, or that kind of stuff. And then if you look at Neidings, Hunding is Sieglinde's husband, and chief of the Neidings. He's a bass. And then Gibichungs, there is something known as the Gibichungs. King Gunther is the king of the Gibichungs, Gitrune his sister, and then Hagen, their half brother, and a male choir. These are all the mortals. And then because this is the second part, and it's known as the Valkyries, there are 9 Valkyries. Valkyries is the Brunhilde, who is the soprano, and there are 8 sisters: Gerhilde, Ortlinde, Valtrude, Valtraute, then Schwertleite, Helvige, Sigrune, Grimgerde and Rosvis. So these are the Valkyries, and then you have the Rhine maidens, because the gold nuggets were taken from were stolen from the Rhine, right? Using deception by Alberic. So Rhine maidens. There are 3 Rhine maidens, right? Voglinde, Velgunde, and Flosshilde, and there are sopranos and mezzo-sopranos. And then you have the giants, because what happened was Alberic actually stole the nuggets from, and he shaped it into a ring, right? And then Alberic shaped into a ring, and this ring grants God the power to the control the world. So there are 2 giants, because this ring is used as a payment for the construction of Valhalla. Valhalla is the home of the gods, right? It's a magnificent palace, and in Stockholm we also have a street called Valhalla Wagon, because this is from the Norse mythology and German mythology and other mythologies, right? And then that's the reason there are giants. The giants are called Fasolt and Fafner. And then you have the Nibelungs. Who are the Nibelungs? Are the persons who shaped this, and he is Alberic and mine, his brother, and Siegfried's foster father. Yeah, and then there are other of course. So if we see that in this drama, in this opera, there are like 5 kinds of characters, right? One are the gods, which are the gods are Wotan, Fricka, Loge, Freyja, Donner, Fro, Erda, and the Noms. And then you have the mortals, Volsungs, who are the Sigmund, Sieglinde, who are the son and daughter of Wotan, and then Siegfried is their son, and then Nidings is the Hunding, and the Gibichungs is these are the mortals. And then you have the Valkyries. There are Bunhilde and the 8 sisters, 9 Valkyries, right? And then you have the Rhine maidens, Jades, and Nibelungs. Rhine maidens are those 3 maidens in the Rhine, right? From which the gold nuggets were taken and shaped into a ring. You have the giants Fasolt and Fafner, and the Nibelungs Alberic and Mine, his brother. And of course the other characters. So this is if you are really coming to some of the key characters, right? And then of course the story. If you really come into the story, what is this story about? Then the plot revolves around a magic ring that grants the power to rule the world, forged by a Nibelung dwarf Alberic. From gold he stole from the Rhine maidens of the river Rhine, with the assistance of the god Loge, Wotan, the chief of the gods. Actually, Loge is like a demigod or god, and Wotan is the chief of the gods. Steal the rings from the Alberic, but is forced to hand it over to the giants Fafner and Fasolt in payment for building the home of the gods, Valhalla, right? Because Fasolt and Fafner need to be paid the ring, but ring actually carries a curse. Actually, whoever has the ring, he gets into trouble. Actually, that kind of stuff, right? And so they will take Freyja, who provides. If they don't give the ring, then these giants, Fafner and Fasolt, will take over Freyja, who provides the gods with the golden apples that keep them young. Because Freyja is important, because she actually plucks or provides the gods with the golden apples that keep them young, right? So Wotan's scheme, basically the whole of this 4, including the first or 3 trilogy in first preface plus the 3 trilogy operas, is basically revolves around Wotan's schemes to regain the ring, spanning generations, drive much of the action in the story. And his grandson is the mortal Siegfried, wins the ring by slaying Fafner, who flews Fasolt. Because among Fafner and Fasolt, this ring has a curse, right? They try to kill each other, and then actually Fafner slays for Fasolt in the process. Fafner is still remaining. That's where in the end he is killed, as Wotan intended, but is eventually betrayed by and slain as a result of the intrigues of Alberic son Hågen. So who wants the ring for himself? Finally, in the Valkyrie Brunhilde, Siegfried's lover and Wotan's daughter, who lost her immortality for defying her father. That's what we see. How this Brunhilde loses immortality because she defies her father at the end in this Valkyries, in the second of the series. Because she loses her immortality for defying her father in an attempt to save Siegfried's father Sigmund, returns the ring to the Rhine maidens. So she finally returns the ring to the Rhine maidens in the 4th part. And as she commits suicide on the Siegfried's funeral pyre, Hagen is drowned as he attempts to recover the ring. In the process, the gods in Valhalla are destroyed. So this is how the ring comes from the nuggets in the river Rhine to finally gets back, and how the gods and the the Valhalla are destroyed. So Wagner created the story of the ring by fusing elements from many Germanic and Scandinavian myths and folk tales. Because I live in Scandinavia, the old, from the Norse Edda supplied with much of the then Volsung saga and all this stuff. The final Gotterdammerung, which is the final part, right? The Twilight of the Gods, draws from the 12th century German poem, the Nibelung's Nibelungen Lied, which appears to have been the original inspiration for the ring. Right. The ring has also been subject of mythological exploitation, because there are like so many things that are a normal person would consider strange that happens in each of these four things, right? The kind of interwoven relationships and so on. So they, for example, some argue that view of the ring is essentially as a critique of an industrial society and its abuses, or Wagner interprets kind of this concept. If you really look into so, then there has been a lot of criticisms and on the concept and on this itself. So if you really come to the concepts, right, Wagner's style has been based on the Italian style of opera, right? In his earlier operas, like if you look at Lohengrin or Tannhauser and so on, and then. So Wagner also faced probably some disappointment in which he felt that audiences were not following him or something, and then so what happened was he also produced the Flying Dutchman, which was because and then Tannhauser in 1845 and so on. So he was also probably at one time probably he said that he will never write an opera, as he has no wish to invent an arbitrary title for them works, and they will call them dramas instead, right? So and then that's the reason for this. He proposed to produce the myth in 3 complete dramas preceded by a lengthy prelude, Vorspiel. That's what we are saying, right? Vorspiel is a Das Rheingold, and then the 3 dramas are this, what we are seeing today, Die Walküre, and then next is Siegfried, and the 4th one is the Gotterdammerung, which ends the ring cycle or the ring of the Nibelungen, right? And so then that's how it was. The concept came out, right? And so opera, and then if you really look at some of the the key characteristics of this, right, it's called leitmotifs. The music follows something known as a leitmotifs, in which because it's in a 4-part with a prelude and a 3 trilogy, right? And then whenever a same character appears or some same circumstances appears, there is the musical element that indicates that that person is present, or that kind of stuff. And also some familiarity with already seen, kind of deja vu kind of feeling that this drama tries to create, right? So Wagner adopted the use of leitmotifs, which are recurring themes of harmonic progression. They musically denote an action, object, emotion, character, or other subject mentioned in the text or presented on stage. Wagner referred to them in opera and drama as guides to feeling, describe how could be used in order for the listener of a musical or dramatic subtext to the action outage. Right, in the same way as a Greek chorus did for the theatre of ancient Greece. And then instrumentation. This has a lot of the music bit is really very, very big for this, because we are sitting in the interval now, right? The music bit is like usually there will be around tens of musicians, about 40-50 musicians, right? This probably has more, and there are some special instruments, right? He wrote for a very large orchestra using the range of instruments used singly or in combination to express a great emotion of range of emotion and events. Wagner even commissioned the production of new instruments, including the Wagner tuba, right, fill into gap he found between some tone qualities of the horn and the trombone, as well as variations of existing instruments such as a bass trumpet and contrabass trombone with a double slide. So he also developed the Wagner bassoons to reach. Bassoons are, in opera orchestra, you find a lot of instruments like bassoons, piccolos, and various violins, so many instruments, right? And then of course all 4 parts will have very similar instrumentation. The core ensemble is 1 piccolo, 3 flutes, and 3 oboes, oboes, and then you have the bass clarinets, horns, tubas, trumpets, trombones, contrabands, and the triangle cymbals, timpani, tuba, harps, right? Violins, violas, double basses, and cellos, and all these things. So, right, Das Rheingold, 1 stage and 8 off stage. Then there is off stage also, right? Die Walküre represents one snare drum and a clarinet and so on. So music is huge, instrumentation is huge. So we saw the characteristics being leitmotifs is one, music characteristics, the instrumentation, heavy instrumentation is one, and then that's the reason the orchestra is very big. Yeah, and then tonality. If you really look at the tonality, right? Said to be very traditional, clearly defined keys for long stretches, but rather in key ringtones, right? Fluidity avoided, the musical equivalent of clearly defined musical. So chromatically altered chords are used very liberally in the ring, right? And so it's often cited as a milestone in which this revolutionary break with the traditional concept of key and right. And if you really look at the composition, then composition, and this is of course the instrumentation and tonality, instrumentation and leitmotifs, right? Music style basically. And then if you really get into composition, the text and so on. And this is a plot, of course, accompanying medieval sources. This is the Nibelungen sketch for a drama, right? And very similar to the plot of a image, but nevertheless with a substantial later, right? And then the music. So this was, as I was telling you, these 4 parts were composed over more than 26 years. So and they were released in 1876, right? Because for this, so it took us a long time. For 1876, they were the premiere was at the Bayreuth Festspielhaus, because and then of course the Das Rheingold and Valkyries had a premiere in 1870, but those were only one kind of a show for the king or something. They were not for public general, widely at least, right? And then so first productions, and then if you really see the Festspielhaus, and then modern productions. So Ring Cycle is performed, it's being a German, the highlight work of Richard Wagner, right? Wagner is a very famous composer. So and he produced these 4 productions over 26 years, right? And then they were starting with the premiere in 1876 in from August 13 to 16. And then what happened was so these are modern adaptations, especially these Bayreuth is a Festspielhaus is a place where I say it should be seen, because Wagner's plays that the theatre itself was created for Wagner's these 4 specifically, and they are played I believe almost every year. They play the most of these 4 together. But other opera houses, last year probably Zurich played all the 4, Zurich Open House Zurich. I believe it's regularly played. Even like today, it's just a Die Walküre is played in Stockholm today. Just it's a single event. Yeah, there is not all the 4 are played. Now the other 3 are not played. These are regularly played around the world, in the Metropolitan in New York, and I believe London Metropolitan. I think the head of Metropolitan Opera, I believe he was saying that the Ring Cycle had the highest logistic effort for any other opera. I heard him saying so Ring Cycle, obviously, because these 4 parts have the highest kind of and the for the opera. And then so that's and then recordings, and then so these are other treatments. If you look at there has been so this is basically about these the Ring Cycle, or the ring of the kind of the Nibelungen, in brief, in which we discussed basically the ring of the Nibelung. It's called the Ring Cycle, or the ring of the Nibelung. So it's basically to encapsulate, right? It's a cycle of 4 German language epic music dramas composed by Richard Wagner, loosely on the characters from Germanic, Scandinavian and other legendary sagas, and Norse mythology and so on. It is a stage festival play structured in 3 days, preceded by a preliminary evening. So it could be seen as 1+3 basically, right? One preliminary evening, or the prelude, or the preamble play, which gives up the main plot for the other 3 plays, or the trilogy. And so it's referred to as the Ring Cycle, Wagner's Ring, or simply the Ring, right? And then so these were the components of to summarize, the components of the rings are Das Rheingold, the Rheingold, Die Walküre that we are seeing today, the Valkyries, and then the Siegfried and the Götterdämmerung, right? So these are this is basically a summary of the the Ring of the Nibelungen or the Ring Cycle, the series of 4 operas composed over, I believe, over 25-26 years, and then with the premiere on in 1876 at the Bayreuth Festspielhaus. So this is an amazing drama, right? A lot of course, critics and have pointed out to various controversies in in the play, but it consists of 5 basic kind of characters: the gods or the demigods, then mortals, then Nibelungs, and other characters, and then you have the Valkyries. Yeah, so these are could be bass, tenors, sopranos, and all this stuff. So that's briefly about the Ring Cycle, or the Ring of the Nibelung, Wagner's Richard Wagner's classic, basically. So that's it's a great opera. Yeah, great opera, and great music again. Yeah.